The air at the Greenwich Country Club was different. It was thin, quiet, and smelled of money so old it had turned to dust and settled in the manicured grass. Into this silent world walked Gloria Samuels, her head held high, a queen entering a foreign land. She clutched her leather purse, a sturdy, no-nonsense bag that had seen more church pews and parent-teacher meetings than it had country clubs. Everything about her was a quiet statement of dignity. Her dress, a simple but perfectly pressed sheath of deep blue. Her shoes, polished to a soft gleam. And on her head, her crown, a wide-brimmed white hat, adorned with a single navy ribbon. It was her Sunday best, the kind of hat her late husband, Frank, used to say made her look like she owned whatever room she walked into. Today, she was counting on that. Her son, Derek, the boy she'd watched build a logistics empire from a single, dusty warehouse in Trenton, had told her this lunch was a simple affair. Just come, Ma. No speeches. Just a quiet toast to celebrate. A toast to celebrate his company, his dream, being acquired by the Hathaway Group, a name that was less a company and more a dynasty, carved into the very bedrock of American finance. Gloria didn't care about dynasties. She was there for Derek, because he had asked. She had barely taken 3 steps onto the pristine marble terrace when a woman in a crisp navy blue uniform stepped directly into her path. The woman's face was a locked door. "Excuse me," she said, the words clipped. "Deliveries and staff are to use a back entrance." Gloria felt a familiar, cold sting. She'd felt it before, in department stores, at school open houses, in 100 other places where her face didn't fit their picture. She tilted her head, the brim of her hat casting a shadow. "I believe there's a misunderstanding. I'm here for a luncheon with my son, Derek Samuels." The woman's expression didn't flicker. "Yes, well, if you're with a catering team, policy is firm. The re-access is around the corner." "I am not staff," Gloria said, her voice dropping a little, gaining a quiet weight. "I am a guest." From across the patio, Derek Samuels had just raised a champagne flute. His eyes, scanning the lawn for his mother, landed on the scene. He saw the staffer's rigid posture. He saw his mother's stillness. The champagne in his glass suddenly felt like acid. His smile froze on his face. Before Gloria could say another word, a new voice sliced through the air, sharp and fragile as a shard of glass. Well, I suppose they're letting the help wander the grounds now, are they?" It was Victoria Hathaway, the matriarch, a woman draped in silk and a string of pearls that hung around her neck like a silent, heavy judgment. Several heads on the terrace turned. A man in a pastel blazer chuckled into his drink. Derek's jaw tightened. The champagne flute was set down on the table with a soft, deliberate click that was louder than a gunshot in the suddenly tense air around him. One of the Hathaway sons, Bradley, gave a nervous little laugh. "Oh, you know Mother. Always joking." But Derek wasn't listening. He was already moving. Victoria Hathaway was already turning away, dismissing Gloria as she would a piece of lint on her sleeve. Just another Tuesday. Derek reached his mother, his face a mask of calm, but his eyes were burning. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You okay, Ma?" She gave a small, brave nod, though her hands were clenched so tightly around her purse the leather groaned. "Don't make a fuss. Baby, this is your day." He looked down at her, at the proud woman in her Sunday hat, and his voice was a low, steady fire. "I know you don't, Ma," he said, "but I will." He then turned to the staffer, his voice never rising, yet it seemed to shake the very air around them. "This is Gloria Samuels, my mother, and you have just disrespected the single most important person in this building." The woman's face flooded with color. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Derek didn't wait. He gently guided his mother back toward the black SUV, opened her door himself, and helped her in as if she were made of spun glass. Before he closed the door, she grabbed his arm, her eyes pleading. "Derek, please, don't ruin your moment over me." He gave her a look that was all love and steel. "Ma," he said, "you are the moment." He shut the door and walked back up those marble steps. The calm in his stride was terrifying. It was a calm of a storm that had already decided exactly where it was going to strike. And what he did next would send shockwaves through boardrooms and newsrooms from coast to coast. Pace picks up, more energy and tension. Back inside, the grand dining hall was a portrait of corporate triumph. A gleaming champagne tower stood by the window. A thick, leather-bound contract sat on the mahogany table, a single, elegant pen resting beside it. Over a year of brutal negotiations, of sleepless nights and transatlantic flights, all culminating in this one signature. Everything was in place, except for Derek Samuels. When he returned, the air didn't just get quiet, it got heavy. It was a kind of silence that follows a thunderclap, when everyone is waiting for the lightning to strike. "Everything all right, Derek?" asked Preston Ward, the Hathaway's general counsel. His voice was laced with a forced casualness, the sound of a man who smells a $10 million problem but can't see the fire yet. Derek didn't answer. He let his gaze drift across the room, over the lawyers, the board members, the family. His eyes finally landed on Victoria Hathaway. She was still sipping her wine, turned halfway in her chair, a portrait of unbothered privilege. She wasn't just comfortable. She was certain that the deal was done, certain that money had already paved over any minor bumps in the road. Derek walked to his chair at the head of the table. He placed his hands on the back of it, but he didn't sit. "I'd like to say something," he said. The room didn't quiet. It froze. "We all know what this merger represents. Not just for our companies, but for the future of logistics in this country. This deal would have changed the game." He paused, looking at every single face. "But I'm not signing it." For 2 seconds, there was absolute stillness. Then the ice broke. A chaos of murmurs. A confused, "Wait, what?" Victoria Hathaway's head swiveled, her leisurely posture gone. "Excuse me." The words were half a laugh, half a threat. Derek met her gaze. "Excuse you? I think that's the issue." Preston, the lawyer, jumped in. "Derek, is this a last-minute negotiation tactic? If there's a concern, we can work it out." "No," Derek said, his voice dropping, becoming almost intimate. "There's no more table." He finally sat, but not in the signing chair. He took one at the far end, as if to put as much distance as possible between himself and the contract. Victoria scoffed, leaning forward with a smile that was all teeth. "Let's not be emotional over a simple misunderstanding. I simply didn't recognize the woman." "That woman," Derek said, his voice dangerously soft, "is my mother." "Yes, I'm aware of that now," she replied, her tone dripping with condescension. "But surely—" "No." Derek cut her off, the single word a clean, sharp blow. "You knew exactly what you were doing, and you said exactly what you meant." Preston cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Derek, we have invested millions in due diligence. Both sides. There are serious legal implications to walking away now." Derek leaned back, a picture of calm indifference. "Then I'll see you in court. You can explain to a judge why humiliating my family was a part of your corporate strategy." "Don't be so emotional," Victoria muttered under her breath. "And that did it." Derek leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. The calm mask finally slipped, revealing the raw, Trenton steel beneath. "Emotional?" he asked, a real, humorless laugh escaping his lips. "You think I built my company from a corner office with a view? I loaded trucks. Victoria, I drove routes at 3 a.m. when the heat didn't work in the cab. I ran payroll from a folding card table in a one-bedroom apartment because we couldn't afford an accountant. I watched my mother, that woman, take 3 different buses to clean other people's houses so I could keep the lights on." He was on his feet now, his voice ringing with a power that had nothing to do with money. "So when she shows up here, wearing her finest, proud as hell of her son, and you look at her like she's dirt on your shoe, you don't just humiliate her. You humiliate everything I am, everything I built." The room was utterly silent. You could hear the blood pounding in your own ears. "There are deals you lose sleep over not signing," Derek said, his voice returning to a low, final calm. "This isn't one of them." And he walked out. No briefcase, no papers, no handshake. He left behind a $900 million crater and a silence that was deafening. Pace quickens, sense of a story spreading. By the next morning, that silence had turned into a digital wildfire. The story leaked, First on a small business podcast, then it was everywhere. Forbes, deal of the decade collapses over class and race incident. Business Insider, black CEO walks from $900 million deal after billionaire matriarch insults his mother. The story had legs because it wasn't just about a deal. It was a modern-day fable. David and Goliath, new money and old, principle and profit. When a reporter ambushed Derek outside his Newark headquarters the next day, shouting, "Do you regret walking away from almost $1 billion?" Derek didn't even break his stride. He just said, "Not yet," and walked inside. That afternoon, he held a press conference. No fancy backdrop, just a podium in a cramped conference room. He looked tired, but his spine was straight. "I didn't cancel the deal over an insult," he began, his voice steady. "I canceled it because the moment you allow disrespect in the room, it becomes part of the foundation. I wasn't raised that way, and I refuse to build a future on a foundation of silence." A reporter asked, "But some would say that's not a good enough reason to torpedo a company-defining deal." Derek nodded slowly. "That depends," he said, "on what kind of company you're trying to define." The world exploded. His speech was clipped, quoted, and shared millions of times. A former Hathaway employee posted a story about being told to use a service elevator at a charity gala. A caterer shared how she was once asked to take off her apron before entering the main lobby. The cracks in the Hathaway facade began to show, and what once looked like class started to look like plain, old entitlement. Behind the stone walls of their Greenwich estate, the Hathaway family was in chaos. "You have to issue an apology," their eldest son, Clinton, pleaded with Victoria. She looked at him, genuinely bewildered. "Apologize? For what?" The woman looked like she didn't belong. "It's not my fault." Their crisis manager just closed her eyes. "You just said that out loud," she whispered. Shift to a more reflective, concluding tone. While the Hathaways scrambled, Derek faced his own battles. His CFO, his cousin, cornered him in a diner, the same one where they'd sketched their first business plan on a napkin. "Our credit line is frozen. Derek, this was our kid's future." "And I wasn't going to build that future on my mother's humiliation," Derek replied, his voice unyielding. He held his ground. And something incredible happened. The world didn't punish him. It rewarded him. Smaller, hungrier firms, inspired by his stand, reached out to form new partnerships. His own team, once terrified, was now fiercely loyal. Then, one evening, Gloria was rushed to the hospital. A minor fainting spell, but the test revealed what time eventually reveals to everyone, that life is fragile. A leaky valve, a mild arrhythmia. Small flags warning him that time was not infinite. Sitting in her hospital room, watching old reruns on TV, he told her his new plan. Not a company, but a foundation. The Gloria Initiative. It would provide health care screenings, tuition stipends, and child care support for warehouse workers, drivers, and cleaning staff, the very people who are so often treated as invisible. Her eyes welled with tears. "That sounds like you," she whispered. At the Foundation's first community event, held in a parking lot in Newark, Derek stood at a simple folding table, serving barbecue to families. Kids ran around with painted faces. The air smelled like joy, not old money. He took the MIC for just a moment. "People said I was crazy to turn down $900 million, he said, looking out at the crowd. "But this right here is worth more than any check I could ever cash." As the sun set, his phone buzzed. It was a voicemail. He didn't recognize the number. The voice was raspy, old, hesitant. "Derek, it's your uncle, Dwayne." The brother of his late father. The man who had vanished 20 years ago, leaving only silence. "I saw you on the news, with your mama. Your father, he would have been so proud." Derek stood there, the sounds of the party fading away, listening to a ghost from his past. And in that moment, he understood. Legacy wasn't a number in a bank account or a merger with a dynasty. It wasn't about the rooms you get into. It was about the principles you refuse to leave at the door. It was a dignity you fight for, the family you protect, and the silence you refuse to pass on to the next generation. It was his mother's hat. It was his father's pride. And it was, and always would be, priceless.